Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rebecca Pickens. I am a certified book coach and a developmental editor. So, as you know, we are here to talk all about crafting dynamic characters that your readers will care about. So, I want to start by reading this quote by Ray Bradbury because I think it's absolutely brilliant. It sums up character development, as I see it, perfectly. Plot is no more than footprints left in the snow after your characters have run by on their way to incredible destinations. So good. I think that this quote is brilliant because it illustrates well that we can spend all of our time crafting amazing, compelling plots that are exciting and vibrant and keep people turning the pages. But a good plot is only as good as its characters. It is only as good as the character that has to navigate that plot. I want to say that one more time because it's really, really important. Your plot is only as good as your character. And the reason for this is that in order for us to care about the amazing plot that you've crafted, we have to care about the people who are confronting whatever it is you are throwing their way, right? In order to feel invested, in order for the stakes to feel high, we have to feel invested in the characters that you're sharing with us. So I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered if your character was engaging enough, believable, relatable, dynamic, or likable enough? When I asked this question in the live, the chat went kind of wild, right? And myself included, I have to raise my hand. We have all wondered these things about our characters. It's what we do. We're writers. But this is the thing that can really get us sometimes is that doubt. Are we nailing our character? Are we capturing these elements? What does a well-written character provide? In other words, why is a well-written character important? Because a well-written character helps the reader engage with the story. It helps the reader care. A well-written character also lends authenticity to your story. If a character is believable, if a character is complicated, they feel real. And so suddenly all the things that are happening around them also feel real. And the writer, rather the reader can really suspend their disbelief and immerse themselves fully in your story. A well-written character provides readers with a look at transformation. We get to see a character change and grow. And in return, we have an experience of transformation, right? When we really connect with a character and we feel what they felt, we're a little bit changed by that afterward when we put the book away. And that is the power of literature, right? A good character makes your story relatable. It helps us connect with your story. A good character is full of conflict that we have to, as readers, engage with and sort through and try to understand, which can be really intriguing. A good character provides your story with depth. A good character helps you flesh out your theme and make it clear to the reader what the point of your story is, what the ideas you're trying to convey are. And finally, and probably most importantly, or most fundamental, I guess, is that a good character provides narrative drive. It gives your story what it needs to keep moving. It's what keeps your reader engaged and turning the pages. So now let us talk about a very famous character who, whether you've read his stories or not, excuse me, you have heard of him most likely, of course, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is just one of the best drawn characters I can think of. And that's for several reasons. One is his very distinctive personality traits. He is an imperfect protagonist. He has demons. He has lots of traits that make him ornery and difficult. We love him despite the fact, but he is not a perfect character. And he is also archetypal. When we think of a detective, when we think of the eccentric, wise detective, we go to Sherlock Holmes first, most of us. Now I want to talk about another compelling character, James. This is the award-winning novel by Percival Everett. It is, if you haven't read this book yet, I encourage you to do so. It's just outstanding. It is absolutely worthy of all the praise it's getting. So James is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn told from the point of view of James, the enslaved man in Huckleberry Finn who was referred to as Jim in the original book. James is a reimagined perspective, right? We are seeing what makes this book so unique and so different than Huckleberry Finn is instead of seeing this character through the eyes of the white author and the characters in Huckleberry Finn, we are seeing this story through the eyes of James. This story is told through his lens. And as a result, we're able to really get inside his head and experience this different, a reimagined perspective. We are able to recognize suddenly how resourceful this character is, how intelligent, how funny he sometimes is. And as a result, we are so much, um, we're up close to this character in a way that we weren't in the original novel. And so he becomes so much easier to emotionally invest in. Suddenly, we're able to really see the world through his eyes. And so we care. We're able to see the injustice that he faced up close. This is a really different perspective than when we think back on our example of Sherlock Holmes, right? We're learning about Sherlock not through his own storytelling. We're not hearing things through his point of view. We're hearing them through Watson's instead, his partner. And that was really a genius move because everything that makes James a compelling narrator of his own story does not work for Sherlock. We would have a very stilted, narrow sense of what goes on for that character. So it was a brilliant move to have someone a little bit more emotional, maybe someone a little bit more insightful to share Sherlock with us. And because of Watson's intervention there, we can really enjoy Sherlock and appreciate him for what he is, rather than if we were to just hear about Sherlock straight from Sherlock. Finally, I told folks today it would not be a webinar by Rebecca if Anne of Green Gables was not mentioned in it. I love Anne Shirley. I find her to be an extremely good example of a compelling character. And probably one of the fundamental reasons for that is that this is an example of a character who has a compelling backstory. So what is backstory? Backstory is all the stuff that happened to your character before we met them. It's not a flashback. It's not a scene that is being showed out in real time that we are seeing that took place in the past. Rather, we're learning about the backstory in the present time, um, maybe through a conversation or maybe through narration. We're learning how the character came to be. In Anne Shirley's case, Anne is an orphan and she has always wanted family. This is brilliant backstory because it helps explain why she does some of the things she does. Personally, if I were to meet Marilla is the rather grumpy person who she comes to live with. Although Marilla has a soft side, we don't see that till much later on. And at first, she's a very gruff woman. And if we didn't have Anne's backstory, we would wonder why the heck does this little girl want to live with this stern, imposing woman who doesn't really even want her? But because we have that backstory and we know that all Anne really wants is to find a family, we can understand why she is making these efforts, why she is going the distance to try to connect with Marilla and convince her to let her stay. So compelling backstory really helps us understand a character's motivation. It also, this character is also really compelling because she's sure not perfect. She is full of flaws and she is full of strengths. It's a very precarious balancing act, and her flaws honestly make her as lovable as her strengths do. Finally, this character is compelling because of the internal conflict that she struggles with and very much wants to be the little girl that Marilla is looking for. Well behaved, responsible, keeps her clothes clean, but she's not. She is a fanciful, highly imaginative, drama-seeking kid at odds with herself. And it's that internal conflict that gives us the story's humor, that gives us the story's good-natured tension. So internal conflict is really key in characters that are compelling. So how to know your character? When a writer comes to me and says, I don't like my characters. I think they're really boring. Or maybe they love their characters, but their readers are not connecting with the characters. Usually, it is not because of an inherent flaw in the character. It's not because the character is unlikable, because in fact, unlikable characters can be a lot of fun to write and to read. Um, so it's not about likability. What it tends to really be is that we don't know the character that we're writing about or reading about. When we don't connect with these characters, it's like they're still strangers to us. So let's think about it this way. What do you do when you are at a dinner party or you go to an event and there's a stranger in the room and you are about to interact with them? You don't just decide you don't like them. You don't just because you don't know anything about them. Quite the opposite. You're a writer. So my guess is you ask them lots of questions. You are going to try in that period of time to get to know them, to get what to know what makes them tick, to understand what their perspective is on things. And you will do that by asking them a series of questions. It's the same thing with your character. Some of the questions you might want to ask your character include this first question, which is, whoops, let me just, this, okay. This first question, which is really the number one question that we all as writers need to ask our characters. What does your character want? That question and the answer is what is going to drive your entire story. It's what your story is about. What does your character want? And what's motivating them? Why do they want this thing? What is in their way? What are the obstacles or hurdles that you are going to throw in front of this character every chance you get in order to create your story's plot? And finally, how does your character's personality and worldview help or hinder their path? So let's go back to our buddy Sherlock, because he is a great example of an author who answered these questions. What does Sherlock want? I put this question out to our audience when we did the live webinar today, and people had a zillion answers. And I love that because the fact that people had so many answers and those answers were coming fast, people had a lot of answers. That means that this is a character that is fully actualized, that has been fully created and drawn for the reader, because we know exactly what Sherlock wants. Sherlock wants several things. Sherlock wants success and he wants recognition for his success. He's a very driven detective, and he wants people to know about his talents. He is also wants intellectual stimulation. He fears boredom more than probably anything else. He really needs that intellectual pursuit to connect with. He wants justice. His justice is a little bit different than the justice we often see our protagonist going for, but nonetheless, it's justice. What motivates him? Well, our motivation in this case is pretty similar to what he is what he wants, right? He wants recognition, and he is motivated by that desire for recognition. What is in his way? Well, a lot of things. One person talked about some of um, his how do I say it? Some of his narrow vision, right? So one of the things about Sherlock is he's got an overabundance of confidence, and that confidence can get in his own way. When he decides he knows the answer, he gets tunnel vision and no longer hears what other people are saying, and he can miss some important details sometimes. What else gets in his way? Somebody pointed out opium. Yes, he has some habits that can get in his way. Stubbornness, arrogance, inability to empathize with others, right? He's not always super kind to Watson. Their relationship can be strained sometimes because he is so obsessed with his sleuthing. He has that hyper focus that he sometimes doesn't see some of the other things that it would help him to see. How does his personality and worldview help or hinder his path? Well, we've just talked about that. These very strong personality attributes don't sometimes mean that he is an amazing detective. They are the reason for his success. And sometimes they are the reason that he has blinders on. So when we want to create compelling character traits, the character traits are really the blood and bones and tissues that make your character breathe on the page. Character traits are essential. They are the difference between a character that we remember, that we love and or loathe, versus a character that we go, and we forget their name, the minute the book is closed. We have lots of tools as writers that we can use to create, to craft a compelling profile of character traits. And those include physical traits, physical attributes, excuse the typo there, our character's emotional state, their socioeconomic position, and their talents and their inabilities. All of these things are traits that we use in order to show our reader who our character is. So here we are with Sherlock Holmes again. I told you guys he's an amazing character. Um, his physical attributes. I asked our audience to name some physical attributes that really stood out to them about Sherlock Holmes. And here it is, this character who has been reinterpreted so many times through films and movies and all kinds of adaptations. Sorry, films and TV shows and all kinds of other um, places. And we have a pretty clear sense of his dress, his posture. These things often don't change very much. In fact, the cover of this book, that profile, yeah, without even telling me, I know that's Sherlock Holmes. So he has these physical attributes that we can immediately identify. By the same token, it's really interesting when you get closer, if you take off that hat and remove the pipe and remove the cape, m many of his physical characteristics aren't really that unique. They're not that singular. I think that this is a genius move. I think the reason he doesn't have a super distinctive hairstyle or we don't really know his eye color, details like that. I think this was a brilliant move by the author to show us that this isn't really what matters with Sherlock. It's this. His story is all happening up here. Um, and he demonstrates that further by sometimes when Sherlock is really engrossed in a project, he starts to neglect hygiene. He starts to, his hair gets kind of funny. So that's another indicator of that hyper focus that he's capable of. But in general, what the writer really, what Doyle really wants us to focus on is what's going on up here. His emotional state is pretty consistently is pretty consistent. He is very pragmatic. He is very analytical. He is very linear. He is not a highly emotional person and actually gets quite frustrated when people do become overly emotional as he sees it. His socioeconomic position is interesting. It's not a huge part of the story, but if you tune into it, you see how it does reinforce this this character that is Sherlock Holmes, right? With a brain like his and with his track record, so another character might monetize that quite well. Sherlock has enough, but Sherlock doesn't have much because that again is not his focus. He's not really concerned with material possessions, what's happening on this layer, on this level of life. He's really up here. And his talents and inabilities we have discussed, and he has plenty of both. And these things are traits that make him all the more compelling. So writers often come to me for coaching because they feel like their characters are falling flat. On the one hand, they know everything about their character. Um, they've plotted them. Many of the people I work with have done beautiful, beautiful outlines before they ever come to me. But there's something that's still not working with the character. The character is not interacting with the plot in a way that they feel is engaging enough. And when that happens, there is usually it is one of these things that I have listed here. Internal conflict is missing, backstory is missing, lack of there may be a lack of agency, a lack of discernible unique traits, or a flat character arc. So when we think of that example of Anne of Green Gables again, and we talk about her internal conflict, I said to you earlier that internal conflict is what gets her into all those fun bits of mischief. We love, all the pickles she finds herself in is because of that internal conflict within her. She wants to be good, but she's Anne Shirley, and good is kind of boring, and there's some other things she'd like to sample in life, right? And when these two parts of Anne butt heads, that's when the fun really ensues. When we don't have internal conflict, when we have a character that, is pretty much okay with how things are, there's not enough conflict. There's not enough character development. There isn't the potential for that in a character that is missing internal conflict. Now, that's not to say every character is going to have internal conflict. There is absolutely a place in many stories for a flat character. Flat does not mean bad. It just does in some instances. And so right now we're talking about instances where it's not working. Um, Backstory. If Anne just happened to jump into that book and we did not know why, we didn't know that she was an orphan, I personally would find it a stretch to think that she would work so hard to stay in the home of Marilla. I think that Marilla would just not be a person that I would work really hard to live with at first. She grows on you, and of course, she is a delightful character as we get to know her better. But I would not believe that a little girl like Anne would instantly want to just jump into this home and convince Marilla and Matthew to adopt her. It would not be compelling enough or believable enough to me. But because we're given that backstory, because we know that she is an orphan, we are able to um, believe that it becomes an authentic detail. Lack of agency can be really challenging for readers. And oftentimes, when we get frustrated with a story, whether it be the one we're writing or one that we're reading that didn't land well with us, it's because a character has a lack of agency. So I'm going to give you an example of a client that I worked with. She was a wonderful writer, and she had a terrific book. It was a YA romance. And we were working through it, and she just got to the point where she said, had to admit to herself, there is not enough narrative drive. There's something about this book that is just losing my interest, meaning her, they lost her interest. It was losing her beta readers' interest. She just wasn't nailing that momentum. We didn't have that narrative drive. And when we looked at the story together, we had a laugh together because she stopped and she looked at a particular chapter and she said, "Oh my goodness, Rebecca, what is up with my character? Why doesn't she just move on? Why won't she move forward? Why does she keep making the same mistake with this guy over and over and over again?" And what my client was pinpointing so perfectly was that her character had a lack of agency. A lack of agency is when a character doesn't really have um, enough wherewithal to sort of change their own situation and move forward. They're stuck, and we're seeing them be stuck in the same way over and over and over again. This isn't to suggest, in the example I just gave you, this isn't to suggest that that character in 3 chapters needs to figure it all out and kick the bad boyfriend to the curb. I mean, that would be a really short book. We want to see this relationship go through all the different stages it needs to go through in order for her protagonist to get the courage to step away. The problem is that the character was stuck, and it almost felt like we were experiencing this in real life, in real time. We were in a relationship that was really dragging us down for too long. Instead, what we ended up doing was working with that character. So, although she did continue to stay in this negative relationship and she did stay in it longer than she should have, new and interesting discoveries were being made all the time. So, at first, we watch that character in this dysfunctional relationship get pulled down further and further. So each scene is different because the character is different after each scene, right? So we're not stuck in the same place with the character. And then eventually we see this character claim their agency and we watch them walk their way out of this situation. So in other words, characters who stay in the same place for too long, lacking agency, can really drag a story down. Flat characters often are lacking discernible unique traits. It's not interesting that a um, character traits like brown ponytails and eyeglasses, unless that has something to do with the story, those kind of details are not the traits we're talking about. We're looking for traits that bust through the stereotypes we expect, that don't mimic tropes that we've seen 100 million times. Instead, they give us something unique to look at and that uniquely represents the character that you are writing about. And finally, flat characters often have a flat character arc. We kind of touched upon that already when we talked about lack of agency, where a character just stays in one place. They don't really change. They don't really move forward, whether because they're not capable of it or we just haven't given them enough to respond to. They just stay flat. So I want to take a little break here to talk about the new group that I mentioned early on, Self-Editing Essentials. And this is group coaching for memoir and fiction writers. And I am so, so excited about this group. And I hope you'll hear me out, even if you're not in a position right now where you will be signing up for a group. There's still some stuff in here that I think you can find useful as a writer. And it's a really perfect segue for what we're talking about in terms of character development. A lot of times when we're doing character development, we we try really hard to get it right the first time, right? We want everyone to love our character as much as we love our character. The thing is, first drafts are really messy, they're really exploratory, and we're going to miss a lot along the way. And so a lot of the things that I'm talking about with you today, if you can get them in right from the get-go, great, go for it. But if you can't, please don't worry about it because there's a million chances later on. And that's when you sit down to revise your novel. the things we're talking about can be feathered into your manuscript. And that's the kind of thing we talk about in this group, Self-Editing Essentials. I developed this group because I work with a lot of writers who, when we're coaching or even when we're doing developmental editing, when we finish, they are on fire. They are inspired. They are excited. They cannot wait to go the distance with their book. So I send them off with lots of feedback and they're excited and they're going to go do their editing work. And then I don't hear from them for a really, really long time. And I get really invested in the writers I work with. And so I worry and I wonder. And eventually they typically will email me and they will send me an image that of what they're going through that kind of sounds like this, kind of looks like this guy. They are feeling alone. They are feeling uncertain. They are feeling frustrated. All of that joy and exhilaration and love they had for their manuscript is gone because they have become so overwhelmed by the work that's stretching ahead of them. And it kind of crushes me, because I know that they are so much closer to the finish line than they feel. And so I have put this group together for people who are feeling exactly like this poor little fellow. The self-editing, essential self-editing, let me try that one more time. Self-editing essentials group is going to be a three-piece offering. The first thing that members of this group will receive are coaching calls. I'm really excited about this part of the program. Twice a month, we will hop on Zoom calls and we will get together for conversation about your project. Everyone will have a chance to ask a question if they choose to. It's also perfectly okay to sit back and listen. What is so exciting about coaching calls that happen in a group like this is that, and I've seen this happen so many times where writers come with a very specific question. Page 7, chapter 1 of my book, I have this question. And they come really expecting only to learn from that one moment. But what happens instead in a good, vibrant group is that other people bring questions to the table that suddenly that first writer realizes, oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that before. I think I need to think about that in my manuscript too. Or somebody brings a problem to the table and we think, oh my gosh, I'm doing that. I'm doing that exactly right in my book. Oh, good. And so we can reevaluate our work in a much more objective way when we start hearing other people's comments and when we hear about what they're struggling with. That objectivity is invaluable when we are editing our work. Another component of the program is going to be a membership board where we can gather anytime we want to share our questions, to share our achievements and our obstacles, what's bugging us, what we're celebrating. It's all okay to share in this group. I will be regularly popping into this group to ask questions, to check in every Monday. Anyone who wants can set some intentions for the week ahead and talk about what their goals are for the week. And I will pop back in on Friday to see how you did with the goals and see what kind of questions you have as a result of working on those goals. And I love accountability. So that's going to be a really big part of the group. And finally, a really exciting feature is this series of modules that I have put together. These are pre-recorded classes about the different parts of editing your manuscript. And you can work through these at your own pace. They may bring up questions that you have that you can then take to our coaching call to discuss together. But what's nice about these modules is they will, if you go through all of them, you will have addressed every question you have about your manuscript. You will be able to really follow this course and reach the conclusion of your editing process. Whoops. So here's how I've designed the modules. It's in three parts. We're going to look at your manuscript from a macro level, a micro level, and then we're going to get really granular. This is now, if you have no intention of joining this group, that doesn't matter. Please, please stay because what I'm going to talk about here is the same approach you can do yourself. This is a great way to tackle a manuscript that's feeling overwhelming that you need to edit. When we are looking at a manuscript, and somebody says, okay, let's go ahead and edit it. That is an impossible starting point, right? You have hundreds and hundreds of pages of words that you need to go through really carefully. It's a very daunting task. And so, what I am doing in this program is breaking that process up in manageable strategic steps. And where we're going to start is at that macro level. So, even if you're doing this independently, it's fine. The macro level is similar to being a developmental editor. It's this upper level look at your story. So you are looking at things like plot structure. You are looking at your character development. Does your character hold the reader's attention? You're looking at narrative drive, character arcs, all of these kind of big picture structural things, the spine of your story, that the thing that holds everything together. From there, we're going to go to micro editing, and that's where we start looking at your story in pieces. We start analyzing each scene. Does the scene um, does the scene move your story forward? Is the scene redundant? Are your characters authentic? Have we found some plot holes? Lots of different things like this that we look at in that second level. And then finally, we're going to look at your story in a really granular way. We're going to look at it the way a line editor might look at a manuscript. So we will be looking at the cadence of your words. We'll be looking for words that feel a little wonky, don't quite work, extra words. We're going to essentially figure out how to make your story, how to polish your story so that it's as beautiful and as shiny as it can be. What you'll achieve in this program, you will learn to read your manuscript with an objective eye. We are going to, for the purposes of this group, we are going to take our author hat off for a while and we are going to put the editor's hat on. And that will make a big difference in your whole experience of looking at your manuscript. It will make it a lot less painful. So we will talk about some tricks and techniques to make that easier. We're going to learn, like I said, the ins and outs of macro and micro edits. We're going to learn how to prepare your manuscript for agents, editors, beta readers, publishers, and we are going to learn the editing skills that you will use over and over and over. One of the things that's really important to me is empowering writers with tools that are practical and that they can apply often. These are tools that you will take with you to any writing project that you want to work on. And finally, as I mentioned today, there is a missing bullet on this page that I am going to go back and add one of these days. And that is the most important bullet. What I hope this group does for you is helps you fall in love with your manuscript all over again. You've been working on this novel for a really long time. If you are at this stage, if you are ready for this group, your manuscript is almost ready or it is ready. And you've worked hard and you are probably a little bit tired of this book. You might be really tired of this book. A lot of people come to me with manuscripts that they haven't been able to look at for, many, many months. They have stuck it in a drawer, they have closed the computer, whatever, and they do not want to see that manuscript. And this process is going to help you fall in love with your story again because you are going to understand exactly what it is you have created. You're going to understand how complicated what you've done is, and you are going to figure out how to make it even better. So it's a really exciting process. I love editing, and I love watching other people acquire those skills because it's an empowering, exciting skill set to cultivate. Okay, the next step is And I will put this link, since I don't have chat enabled, I will put this link in the email that you are receiving this video in. This link will take you, if you are interested, this will take you to my calendar. And it'll take you to a page with more information about the program, but it will also take you to my calendar. And while you are there, you can schedule a 15-minute discovery call with me where I will ask you some questions about your project to make sure that this group is a good fit for you. It's really important to me that the people who participate in this group are getting what they need. And I want to make sure that we're a match for each other. So that is what this call is for. And then if this call proves to be interesting for you and you think this group is going to be helpful, then by all means, I would love to invite you to join our group. So here are the details. What you will get. You will get 2 group coaching calls per month. And they are recorded. So if you're not able to make all of them, you will always have a recording. You will receive 4 months of modules. Those are the classes that I talked about already. Lots of community and connection, lots of accountability. If you complete the course, you will receive one-on-one coaching call with me, where we talk about what you have figured out, what you're still confused about, what you should do next. So that can be a really valuable part of your experience. And finally, the details are this course, this group coaching package is $350 a month for 4 months. And I want to explain the timing of this program a little bit. So people are free to join anytime they like. It's ongoing enrollment. I work with writers who are really at all the different stages. And many of the writers I work with are already in communication with agents, or they have plans to submit to beta readers or a developmental editor. I want to be very mindful of those writers' schedules. Those writers tend to want to get in and out, and because they are trying to meet a deadline of some sort. And so what I've done is put this together so that the modules can be completed in 4 months' time. Um, it'll be a full 4 months, but it's absolutely positively doable. And the idea is they will finish in 4 months and be ready for the next stage. However, I also work with a lot of writers who are not under a strict deadline. And they've got time to maybe go through the process at a more leisurely pace, or may find that they just love having this community of writers that they can check in with on a regular basis. And for those of you who fall in that camp, I want to make it possible for you to linger longer and stay with us. And so after you've finished the first 4 months, and you've had an opportunity to run through all the modules, your tuition will go down to $175 a month after that. And you will still have access to the modules and all of that. Nothing changes except the price. So hopefully that is helpful. Again, if you are interested and you want to set up a discovery call to talk more about the program, you can visit the link that I'm going to put in your email. Finally, we're going to get back to talking about character arcs in just a second, but I did want to offer this awesome opportunity. I offered it in our call today as well. I am going to offer the first 3 people who join our community, I'm going to offer them a free 1-hour coaching call, private coaching call. It's valued at $125, and we will use that time to talk about your manuscript. I am also asking you or inviting you to submit 5 pages of your manuscript that I will review and provide feedback for before our meeting, so we can really talk about what's working in that 5-page excerpt, and also talk about ways that you can make it even better. The way it's going to work is the first step, like I said, is to sign up for that Zoom link, that Zoom call where we just talk and make sure that this is really a good fit for you. If you decided that it is and you go ahead and you register for the class, it's the first three registrants, not the first three discovery calls, the first three registrants who will get this awesome opportunity. So I'm not often able to offer an opportunity like this, and I'm really excited that I can do that for this group. Okay, back to the program. Character arcs defined. Character arcs are so important. They describe the transformation or the inner journey that your character experiences in your book. Oops. If you want to talk about the quintessential character arc, the character who goes through a transformation that is just exemplifies perfectly what we're talking about. Ebenezer Scrooge is your man. Dickens nailed this character arc. Um, Ebenezer Scrooge is a character who starts at point A, one very specific way with very distinctive characteristics, and evolves over time, has a very clear, pronounced character arc, and he winds up somewhere different afterward. We go on a journey with this character and we witness his transformation. So, how does Dickens do it? He starts with a very crystal clear false premise, something that this character believes about himself that is incorrect. Or believes. It doesn't have to be about himself, that something that he believes. In this case, he believes that money is the most important thing. He believes that he is above kind of the people around him, and that money is what motivates him to do what he does. Then Dickens throws a real curveball at this character, doesn't he? Ghosts start visiting Ebenezer, and here is our inciting incident. Here is the thing that starts to make our character very uncomfortable. It starts to challenge his worldview. It makes him reconsider, reevaluate. It terrifies him. And as a result of all these really big experiences that have occurred, these circumstances change his character. He learns that Tiny Tim is going to die if something doesn't change. He's horrified by this information, and the consequence of this is his transformation. He goes from being this guy who won't even light the fire in his office. He's got freezing cold workers, to the guy who is bringing his workers a beautiful turkey, the biggest turkey in town. And we see this full character arc, and we get to enjoy this transformation. Now, Ebenezer Scrooge, in the hands of a less able writer than Dickens, could be really unbelievable, right? This could be a really schmaltzy story. And yet it has endured all this time because Dickens understood character development. He understood that a character arc can't go from here to here. Rather, it is a long, slow transformation that makes sense because we have that character's character traits. We understand how he thinks about the world. We understand what he wants, and then we see him interact with a lot of different plot points that bring this character full circle. So this is just an outstanding example of a character that we can study to understand character arc. Okay, so we're going to talk about three kinds of character arc. There are many others, but the three that we're going to talk about today really cover the bases well for a general conversation like this one. You will probably find that one of these arcs will do the job for the characters that you're crafting. The first one is the positive arc. And the positive arc is the arc where most of us are most familiar with. And of course, we've just seen a very famous example of a positive arc, and that would be Ebenezer Scrooge. This is the instance where the character starts flawed or weakened. They evolve by overcoming external or internal challenges. The consequence is that character has growth and transformation. So, the kind of book we read when we want to feel good, when we want to feel inspired, when we want to feel hope, follows this kind of positive arc. And it's what we mostly see on the bookshelves at the bookstore because that is the kind of book that makes us feel changed and feels better. However, our characters can also have what's called a negative arc. Not all stories have happy endings, which is where the negative arc comes into play and can really shine. This arc focuses on characters who start with good intentions or positive moral values, excuse me, but they deteriorate due to personal flaws, external challenges, or both. No place do we see this better. Someone brought this, excuse me, 1 minute. Someone in our group earlier on gave the example of the television show Breaking Bad. Walt is your perfect example of the negative arc. He starts out, he's this kind of ordinary guy. He's a teacher, high school teacher. Circumstances come his way. He feels he has no other choice but to go down this really, really dark road that we watch him go down. And unfortunately, he never comes back. He goes down a pretty negative character with a negative arc. Other examples of the negative arc that we see in literature would be Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. He starts off, never feeling real great, but he starts off an okay person, but eventually situations put him on a trajectory that makes him increasingly bitter, hostile, and sets him off on that negative arc. Finally, we have the flat arc. Now, I just spoke earlier on about how we want to avoid the flat arc. Let me be really clear. We don't always want to avoid a flat arc. When we feel like a character isn't working well, one of the questions we ask is it because their arc is flat? Because if you have a character that really needs to have a positive or negative arc, the flat arc is going to fall flat and make them not very interesting, right? It's very important that you match your character. It's like a pair of shoes. It's got to fit. It's got to be the right fit for your character. But there are characters for whom the flat arc is absolutely perfect. A flat character arc refers to characters who remain largely unchanged throughout a story. While they may experience external events or challenges, their core beliefs, values, and personality traits remain consistent. So, oftentimes you will have secondary characters who follow this flat arc. They are just consistent. They are steady, and it's their job to be the thing that your more dynamic characters who have these more dramatic arcs respond to. Not every character needs to be transformed. That would be a really overwhelming story, in fact, right? So the flat arc just provides that consistency and gives your other characters someone to react to. Oftentimes, like I said, these are secondary characters, but not always. Can you think of some flat arc characters that we've already talked about today? There's a really famous one, and yes, it is Sherlock. Sherlock doesn't change. We are not going to watch this character have an aha moment and suddenly realize, oh, Watson's a great guy. I'm going to take him out, for a cup of coffee and really get inside his head and learn about him. Sherlock's not going to do that. He is who he is, and we love him or loathe him for that. But however we feel about his personality, we show up to his books over and over again, wanting and expecting a flat arc. A lot of detective stories that we enjoy have that flat arc. Agatha Christie's detectives, flat arc. There are also some very compelling characters who have a flat arc who are maybe a little bit more layered, or than some of your straight flat arc detectives. Atticus Finch comes to mind from To Kill a Mockingbird. This is a character who is driven by justice and a personal code of ethics and morality that does not waver ever. And that is the power of that character. His flat arc is interesting and it is compelling and powerful because of the fact that it doesn't change. So a flat arc can actually be very compelling. It doesn't mean that it's uninteresting or not worth including. So that's it. I'm gonna stop sharing. I've stopped sharing. Okay. And I want to thank you again for joining me. Uh, I am so glad for this opportunity. Again, my apologies that we couldn't do a live chat tonight, but I do want to invite anyone who has a question about what we've discussed tonight or a question about self-editing essentials to please reach out and keep in touch. I would love to hear about your project. I would love to hop on a discovery call with you if you think that I may be able to help you out. And yeah, that's what's happening. So thank you so much, everyone. Keep writing.